Every day, something dramatic happens in the Caribbean that affects our lives. We'll give you the details. We'll give you the facts on Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick. Host Eddie Frederick.
Welcome to Caribbean Perspective. So glad you can join us. The story that takes the lead in today's edition for Tuesday, 9th April 2024, and brought to you in association with our friends at Antillian Group. Rastafarian Community Appeals to be given lead in benefiting from commercialization of marijuana. Details after this important message.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all, perils big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so clear to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
Welcome back. The local Rastafarian community in St. Lucia is appealing for it to be given the lead in benefiting from any commercialization of the marijuana plant through a regulated cannabis industry. Manasseh Stanislaus of DBS News World tells us more.
The newly elected executive of ICA is seeking to create alliances with international groups which share similar history with them. Cannabis, which is now legalized across many states in the US for medical purposes, is a right which is sought after by ICA in St. Lucia. The president of ICA, Aaron Alexander, shares his vision for the organization, noting that his aim is to have an inclusive group of members who will fight for their rights.
One of the main focus for me would be to open up the organization to a more Pan-African sort of reception, because oftentimes we focus a lot on just the experience and the situation and what we have gone through as a Rastafarian community. But we also have to be cognizant of the fact that it's not only the Rastafarian community in particular that has gone through such tribulations, but other persons as well, especially persons in using cannabis.
Aaron Alexander encourages St. Lucians to seek knowledge beyond the traditional sources. He also encourages anyone persecuted by a particular sector to not discontinue the use of certain drugs if there is no legal penalty associated. Alexander shares the belief that all plants have positive healing properties which should be used for the healing of the nation.
Even our own medical fraternity here, taking adopting the position of the FDA and the CDC and the WHO and all of them in fighting ivermectin as a medication that could be used for COVID. And now that in post-COVID era, we've seen that the FDA is admitting that they were wrong, the CDC is admitting they were wrong. And they're recommending COVID, they're recommending ivermectin. And we saw the persecution of Dr. Gilbert for St. Rose. And even now, I think the Medical Dental Association is still really bullying Dr. St. Rose.
The ICA president highlighted the challenges faced in gaining the rights for the use of cannabis in a medical and ritual setting. Alexander is seeking to ensure that his community benefits from the first fruits of legalization of cannabis since the world previously ostracized Rastafarians.
From eons, from decades, Rastafari have been talking about cannabis and the many uses of cannabis and the benefits of cannabis, and we have been bullied, we've been victimized, we've been, some of us were even murdered over cannabis, and now we're seeing all countries are moving towards legalization. So it is only fair that the persons who have suffered the most should be the first in line to benefit the most. So the council under my presidency will position the organization to ensure that we reap the benefits of the legalization and the commercialization of cannabis in this time.
Alexander underscored the importance of seeking justice via reparations for the Rastafari community in the upcoming meeting with government officials due to the hardships that the organization felt.
The Prime Minister, as a matter of fact, through the chairman of the Cannabis Task Force and Minister of Commerce, Honorable Emma Hippolyte, they've asked for a reparatory justice proposal from the Rastafari community. That comprehensive proposal went in since June last year. And in my term now as president, I will be looking forward to meeting with the government, meeting with the Prime Minister to know where they stand on our proposal. Because we must have reparatory justice for all the brutalization done to the Rastafari community due to our association with cannabis.
On Sunday, 7th April, the newly elected executive will be meeting to form plans and proposals for justice and also the right to be on the first line of economic and medical benefits of cannabis. The president of ICA is asking for full attendance from its members at the meeting. For the DBS News World, Manasseh Stanislas reporting.
With renewed calls for the Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ, to replace the Privy Council as Trinidad and Tobago's final court of appeal, a former Attorney General believes that decision should be made by the people. Meanwhile, if the government is hoping for opposition support to make that alteration to the country's constitution, Senator Wade Mark tells CNC3's Akash Samaru that will not happen.
To make any alterations to this country's constitution, it will require a 3/4 majority in the lower house and 2/3 in the upper. Meaning if the government wants to replace the Privy Council with the Caribbean Court of Justice, it will need support from at least 10 opposition MPs and at least 6 people outside of the government in the Senate. But opposition support seems highly unlikely, as the United National Congress has made it unequivocally clear that it is not supporting such a decision.
As far as the United National Congress is concerned, the people of Trinidad and Tobago are of the view, from based on our take on it, that they get more fairness, more justice in the Privy Council.
Senator Mark believes the CCJ will be too susceptible to political influence.
You have seen this government at work, how they treated Mr. Basti Opandi. They have used their power of influence within the judiciary.
Meanwhile, former Attorney General Ramesh Lawrence Maharaj believes while the CCJ does perform an important role, the decision to fully adopt it should not be in the hands of parliamentarians, but rather the country's people, by way of a national referendum.
The issue here is not whether one prefers the Caribbean Court of Justice or the Privy Council. The issue here is what is the right way to make such a decision.
Attorney General Reginald Armour, who made the call for the CCJ following the death of its former president, Michael de Labastide, did not respond to our questions. However, in looking at the Hansard from when this matter was debated in 2022, Armour said the move to the CCJ is the main task given to him by the Prime Minister. And with respect to its credibility, Armour told the Senate then that people should have confidence in the intelligence and fairness of its own Caribbean people to deliver justice. Akash Samaru, CNC3 News.
You're listening to Caribbean Perspective with Eddie Frederick,
in association with our friends at
Antillean Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.
The Office of the Prime Minister announced on Friday last that an official funeral will be held in honor of the former Chief Justice Michael de Labastide. Jewel Brown of TV6 News has more.
A photo posted by the Finance Ministry on Facebook shows Acting Prime Minister and Finance Minister Colm Imbert signing the condolence book for the late former Chief Justice Michael de Labastide at the Hall of Justice on Friday. The Finance Ministry said the Acting Prime Minister also exchanged words of comfort and solace with the family of Mr. de Labastide. Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley and his wife, Attorney-at-Law Sharon Rowley, left for Ireland on vacation earlier this week. Another photo posted by the Finance Ministry also shows President Christine Kangaloo was in attendance at the signing of the condolence book for Mr. de Labastide at the Hall of Justice on Friday. The Finance Ministry also said Chief Justice Ivor Archie was also present. The Office of the Prime Minister announced on Friday that the official funeral for former Chief Justice de Labastide will be held on Thursday, April 11th, at the Church of the Assumption, Long Circular Road, Maraval, at 10 a.m. TV6 News also understands that unlike a state funeral, the protocols for an official funeral do not include the national flag being flown at half-mast on the days leading up to the funeral, and an official funeral does not include the full military honors of a state funeral. Contacted for comment, Foreign and CARICOM Affairs Minister Dr. Amory Brown said state funerals are accorded to heads of state and government. Regarding the official funeral for the former Chief Justice, the Foreign Affairs Minister told TV6 News that the government is currently working closely with the de Labastide family, with the Ministry of the Attorney General, the CCJ, the Judiciary, and other key stakeholders in the planning process for an official funeral in honor of the outstanding life and service of Michael de Labastide. Mr. de Labastide also served as the first president of the CCJ the Caribbean Court of Justice, which is located in Port of Spain.
Still on Trinidad, leader of the National Transformation Alliance and former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith is accusing the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago of hypocrisy over concerns he has continuously raised about the number of legal firearms that were being issued by Griffith as top cop.
People going to government ministers, parliamentarians and other influential people seeking to have their request for a firearms user's license forwarded to the Commissioner of Police is normal and occurs regularly. That's according to former top cop Gary Griffith, who says the Commissioner should then ensure that proper procedure is followed and that a system for getting an FUL isn't bypassed. During his tenure, Griffith says he received a request from Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley.
Prime Minister, he came point blank and he asked me to consider giving someone a firearm dealership in Tobago. And that was a request that he made, and he gave the justification. He said that it was required. He also recommended that a range should be built.
According to Griffith, while he would not usually divulge information of that nature, he says that he feels compelled to.
Because of the blatant hypocrisy, where it is I continue to hear the concerns by this government as it pertains to firearm licenses being issued. You're concerned about firearm licenses being issued by myself, yet you're recommended to me to try to influence me to get a dealership for someone you know in Tobago to sell thousands of more firearms. And again, as I said, there's nothing wrong with that because he was explaining the need for a firearm dealer in Tobago so that firearms could be sold because Tobagonians needed to get firearms as well based on the escalating crime situation in Tobago.
Asked if any pressure was placed on him by Dr. Rowley to grant the request, he says no.
It was not based on him trying to use his position to try to pressure me to do it. But it is rather unusual. I think that might be the first time in history that a Prime Minister would make a recommendation to a Commissioner to have someone get a firearm dealership license to sell thousands of firearms.
Griffith claims that there was also a long list of recommendations for FULs from ministers and other members of Parliament on behalf of people he calls the rich and famous, as well as firearm variation licenses for themselves.
But when it was being provided for the small businessman, for the farmer, for the hunter, for the person involved in sport, you had an issue.
In response, Prime Minister Rowley says Griffith is a liar. He tells us, quote, I did raise with him to consider the Tobago Rifle Association complaint that they had no proper dealer who can service firearms in Tobago. I never even met the people of the club, nor do I know the leader, but they sent a complaint to me that their issues were being ignored. It is against that background that I raised the matter with the Commissioner. End quote. Griffith admits to granting 6 dealership licenses when he was top cop. To that, the Prime Minister says, quote, ask him if he ever granted any to the people of Tobago who claimed they had no service. Even after the Prime Minister raised the issue with him, did he comply? Did he service the people of Tobago? No. But he comes now with a mouthful of lies about preferential treatment to a person for a firearm. End quote. Alicia Boucher, TV6 News.
Bahamas' permanent representative to the Organization of American States, OAS, is now the chair of the OAS Permanent Council. ZNS News has more.
Thanks a lot, Alto. Meantime, the Bahamas' permanent representative to the Organization of the American States, Chet Nemore, is now the chair of the OAS's Permanent Council until June 30th. The brief ceremony took place at the Hemispheric Organization's Washington, D.C. headquarters on Wednesday. In a brief message following the ceremony, Foreign Affairs Minister the Honorable Fred Mitchell invited OAS member states to collaborate on advancing democracy, human rights, security, and development for a stronger Americas.
We must deliver on the pledges and commitments of our lofty resolutions, declarations, statements, and every iteration thereof. Our citizens expect it, and undoubtedly they deserve it. While I may be the individual receiving the ceremonial gavel this morning, I am certainly not an individual unto myself. Invariably, I carry with me the indomitable spirit of every Bahamian in our Commonwealth, because it is they whom I represent. I am the vessel to execute the charge of the government and people of the Bahamas.
I am Eddie Frederick. This has been Caribbean Perspective, a whole new approach to highlighting developments in the Caribbean.
In the meantime, please follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily regional news and more, in association with our friends at Antillian Group.
Believe in our strength, we'll stand by you. Protection from all perils, big and small. Reassurance we give, it's so glad to see. Peace of mind, that's our service guarantee. We look after all our family. Yes, we do at every opportunity.
Antillian Group, underwriters of all classes of insurance solutions for your protection and investment. Live well financially.